Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into an important topic: Introduction to Wastewater Characteristics and Treatment. I'm excited to guide you through this presentation. We'll explore the basics of wastewater, its key characteristics, and the treatment processes that help protect our health and environment. Over the next few slides, we'll cover fundamental concepts, from simple definitions to complex biological systems that turn community waste into safe, clean water. Let's get started. Let's start by understanding what wastewater really is. Water, as we know, is a simple compound made of two hydrogen atoms bonded to one oxygen atom, H2O, but in our daily lives, the water we use is rarely pure. It usually contains many other substances, which we call impurities. Now, wastewater is basically the water that a community has used and then spent. It includes the impurities that were present when the water was first obtained, plus anything added during human activities like cleaning, cooking, or flushing toilets. To better understand the terminology, we need to know a few key terms. Sewage refers specifically to domestic or household wastewater. Think about the water from sinks, toilets, and showers. Influent is the term for raw wastewater as it first enters a treatment plant, before any cleaning or processing. And effluent is what we call the treated water that gets discharged from the plant back into the environment. Connecting this to our overall theme, understanding these distinctions helps us grasp how wastewater is managed and treated, which is essential for protecting our health and our environment. Let's talk about the sources of wastewater we encounter. First, we have domestic wastewater, which comes from our homes and businesses. This type of wastewater typically contains fecal and vegetable matter, grease and scum, detergents, rags, and sediment. These are the everyday pollutants generated by our daily activities. Next, there's industrial wastewater, which originates from manufacturing processes. This kind of wastewater can be quite complex, often containing toxic chemicals and metals, strong organic wastes, radioactive wastes, high-temperature effluents, and acidic or caustic substances. Because of these potentially hazardous components, many industrial wastewaters require pretreatment before they can be safely discharged into the collection system. This helps prevent any disruption in the treatment process. Finally, we have storm wastewater, which is generated from streets and parking lots during rain events. This runoff often contains motor oil, gasoline, pesticides, herbicides, and sediment. It's important to remember that stormwater can carry pollutants directly into our water bodies if not properly managed. Most modern wastewater treatment facilities are designed primarily to treat domestic wastewater effectively. However, because of the variety of pollutants from industrial and storm sources, additional steps like pretreatment are often necessary before these wastewaters enter the treatment plant. Understanding these different sources helps us appreciate the complexity of wastewater management and the importance of protecting our water resources. Let's take a closer look at the different types of waste discharges. First, we have organic wastes, which are substances that contain carbon and come from something that was once living. Think of things like vegetable and fecal matter, grease, proteins, sugars, and even paper. These are all examples of organic waste because they originate from biological material. On the other hand, we have inorganic wastes. These substances do not contain carbon and are not derived from living things. Examples include metals, minerals, salts, acids, and bases. They are typically inorganic in nature and come from different industrial or natural sources. Now, why is this distinction important? Well, the main goal of treating wastewater is to prevent pollution in the receiving waters. Pollution can severely impair water quality, making it unsuitable for many beneficial uses, whether that's drinking, supporting fish habitats, irrigation, or recreation. So, understanding these waste types helps us design better treatment processes, ultimately protecting our water resources and ensuring they remain safe and beneficial for everyone. Let's take a closer look at pollution pathways. First, we have point sources. These are specific, identifiable sources of pollution, like wastewater treatment plant discharges through an outfall pipe. These are generally controlled by operators, which means we can manage and regulate them more effectively. On the other hand, there are non-point sources, which are a bit more complex. These include agricultural and industrial pollution that comes from widespread discharges across large areas. Because these sources are so spread out, they are very hard to control and regulate compared to point sources. To put it simply, point source discharges can be directed into streams, rivers, lakes, or even underground aquifers, and they are easier to manage because they come from a specific location. Non-point sources, however, are more diffuse and don't come from a single outfall pipe, making them much more challenging to control. Understanding these differences is crucial as we look at how pollution moves through our environment and how we can better manage and mitigate its impact. Now, let's take a closer look at the effects of sludge and scum. These are mainly organic materials found in domestic and some industrial wastewaters. If we don't remove them properly through treatment, they can cause significant environmental problems. Starting with river bottom accumulation, when sludge deposits settle at the bottom, they can block fish, especially species like trout, from spawning successfully. This disrupts the natural reproductive cycle and harms the aquatic ecosystem. Moving on to stream bank problems, scum tends to float on the water surface, and this can lead to unpleasant odors. It also provides a breeding ground for infectious diseases, which can pose health risks to both humans and wildlife. Plus, scum makes the water look unsightly, diminishing the natural beauty of our streams and rivers. All of these issues highlight why effective wastewater treatment is so crucial, not just for maintaining water quality, but also for protecting our aquatic life and overall environment. Let's talk about the oxygen depletion crisis. Organic waste like fecal matter, vegetable scraps, toilet paper, and sugars can set off a dangerous chain reaction in our waters. The core issue here is oxygen depletion, which poses a serious threat to aquatic life. First, aerobic bacteria start to multiply rapidly as they feed on this excess organic waste. As they consume the waste, they need more dissolved oxygen, or O2, to keep up with their growing populations. Next, as the bacteria population expands, they end up using more oxygen than is available in the water. This means the oxygen levels start to drop significantly. When oxygen becomes scarce, aerobic organisms, including many bacteria and aquatic animals, begin to die off because they can't survive without enough oxygen. As oxygen levels plummet, anaerobic bacteria, those that don't require oxygen, take over. They thrive in these oxygen-depleted, septic conditions and produce hydrogen sulfide gas, which is not only harmful, but also gives a foul odor to the water. This entire process underscores the importance of managing organic waste and maintaining healthy oxygen levels to protect our aquatic ecosystems. Let's talk about what happens when conditions become anaerobic, meaning there's no oxygen available. One of the key concerns is the production of hydrogen sulfide, H2S, which is also known as sewer gas. This gas smells like rotten eggs, so it's quite unpleasant. But beyond the smell, it's also explosive and toxic, making it a serious safety hazard. It can even cause suffocation in high concentrations. Now, when the dissolved oxygen in water is used up, anaerobic bacteria start to grow in this altered environment. These bacteria don't breathe oxygen like we do. Instead, they use other elements, such as sulfate, to survive. As they do this, they produce various objectionable byproducts that can harm the environment. Some of these byproducts include organic acids, methane gas, which is actually a potent greenhouse gas, and nutrients that can lead to issues like algal blooms. And importantly, hydrogen sulfide not only smells bad, but also causes odors that are harmful and disruptive. This is why one of the main goals of wastewater treatment is to prevent organic waste from entering natural water bodies. By controlling these processes, we help protect our environment and ensure water quality. Let's talk about the nutrient problem we face in water bodies. Nutrients are substances that living plants and animals need to grow. The major nutrients we're concerned with are nitrogen and phosphorus, which are often found in wastewater in different forms. Starting with nitrogen in the influent, that's the incoming wastewater, you'll find ammonia, which is NH3 and organically bound nitrogen. We typically measure this total nitrogen using a test called the total Kjeldahl nitrogen, or TKN. Once the wastewater has been treated and becomes effluent, you'll see nitrogen in several forms: ammonia, organic nitrogen, nitrite, which is NO2, and nitrate. NO3. These different forms are important because they tell us about the nitrogen cycle happening in the water. Moving on to phosphorus. This nutrient mainly appears as phosphates, or PO4, in both influent and effluent. Now, why does all this matter? Well, when large amounts of these nutrients enter rivers and lakes, they can cause excessive plant growth. Think algae blooms. These blooms can choke water bodies, blocking sunlight from reaching lower algae layers. As these lower layers die off, bacteria feed on the decaying matter, leading to oxygen depletion in the water. This cycle can severely harm aquatic life and disrupt the health of our water ecosystems. So, controlling nutrient levels is crucial for maintaining healthy water bodies and ensuring our environment stays balanced. Toxic threats in wastewater are an important aspect to understand when we're considering environmental safety. Let's start with ammonia toxicity. Ammonia is the main form of nitrogen found in domestic wastewater, and even small amounts can be deadly to fish. The toxicity level, however, isn't fixed. It actually depends on factors like pH, temperature, and how much the wastewater is diluted when it enters receiving waters. For example, warmer temperatures and higher pH levels can make ammonia significantly more toxic, which is something we need to monitor carefully. Next, we have residual chlorine. This is the leftover chlorine from the disinfection process used in wastewater treatment. Even tiny amounts of residual chlorine can be harmful to aquatic life, especially fish. That's why many treatment facilities perform dechlorination to ensure that no measurable residual chlorine remains before the water is released back into the environment. Finally, nitrate contamination is a serious concern, especially for groundwater. Nitrates, which often come from the conversion of ammonia by bacteria in soil, can contaminate groundwater supplies. This is particularly dangerous for infants, as high nitrate levels can cause methemoglobinemia, also known as blue bobby's syndrome. Recent studies have also linked long-term consumption of elevated nitrate levels to other health issues, highlighting the importance of controlling nitrate pollution. Overall, these toxic threats, ammonia, residual chlorine, and nitrates, are interconnected challenges that we must address to protect aquatic ecosystems and public health. Now, let's talk about suspended solids and habitat loss. Both inorganic materials like sand, dirt, and silt, as well as organic materials such as sludge, tend to settle on the river bottoms. This buildup is a big problem because it prevents fish from spawning properly. When these particles deposit on the riverbed, they essentially cover the spawning grounds, making it difficult for fish to lay their eggs and for juveniles to survive. One of the most significant non-point source pollution issues we face is habitat loss caused by these suspended solids silting up the river bottoms. Non-point sources are diffuse, like runoff from fields or urban areas, which carry these sediments into our waterways. But it's also important to remember that point source discharges, say from a sewage treatment plant or industrial facility, can contribute to this problem as well. Overall, this silting impacts the health of aquatic ecosystems and highlights how various pollution sources can lead to habitat degradation, threatening the very survival of fish populations and the overall biodiversity in our rivers. When we talk about pathogenic organisms in wastewater, we're referring to the disease-causing microbes that can be present when people contribute waste to the collection system. These pathogens can lead to serious waterborne diseases. Common examples include typhoid, hepatitis, cholera, dysentery, and polio. Now, these pathogens come in different forms: bacteria, viruses, and protozoa. For bacteria, you might encounter cholera, shigella, and salmonella. When it comes to viruses, Norwalk, rotavirus, and adenovirus are typical culprits. And for protozoa, Giardia lamblia and Cryptosporidium parvum are notable examples. A key part of our wastewater treatment process is disinfection. Disinfecting the effluent before it's discharged is crucial to prevent the spread of these pathogens. To measure how effective our disinfection is, we use fecal coliform bacteria as an indicator organism. If the levels of fecal coliform are reduced to safe levels, it generally means the water is safer for the environment and public health. So, understanding these pathogens and ensuring proper disinfection helps us protect public health and maintain clean water systems. Fecal coliform, the indicator organism, is a crucial concept because testing for every possible pathogen in water isn't practical. Instead, we rely on fecal coliform as a marker for contamination. These organisms live in the intestinal tracts of all warm-blooded animals, including humans. So, when we find fecal coliform in water, it signals that a warm-blooded animal has likely defecated into that water, and that means pathogens could be present. Now, I want to highlight an important note here. Some members of the fecal coliform group, like certain strains of E. coli, can produce toxins and be harmful. However, as a whole, fecal coliform bacteria are not necessarily pathogens. They're more like a warning sign. In fact, we all carry billions of these bacteria in our intestines, living comfortably there. So, in summary, fecal coliforms are a practical, reliable indicator because they help us assess water safety without testing for every pathogen. Their presence points us toward potential health risks and guides us in ensuring water quality for everyone. Let's take a closer look at how temperature and pH can affect water quality and treatment processes. Starting with temperature effects, it's important to understand that high water temperatures can disrupt the natural ecology in surface waters. When temperatures rise, they can encourage the growth of algae and aquatic plants that wouldn't normally be as prevalent. This can lead to problems like algal blooms, which can negatively impact water quality. On the other hand, seasonal temperature changes also impact how well treatment plants operate. During colder weather, the activity and growth of microorganisms that help break down waste slow down significantly. This means that treatment processes can become less efficient in winter, requiring adjustments to maintain effectiveness. Now, moving on to pH effects. pH measures how acidic or alkaline the water is on a scale from 0 to 14, with 7 being neutral. Values below 7 indicate acidity, while values above 7 indicate alkalinity or basicity. Most aquatic organisms thrive within a narrow pH range close to neutral. If effluent, meaning the treated water being released, has a pH that differs significantly from the receiving water, it can harm or even kill local organisms. Additionally, rapid or large fluctuations in pH levels in the influent, before treatment, can disrupt the entire treatment process itself. So, maintaining proper temperature and pH levels is crucial not only for environmental health, but also for ensuring our treatment systems work efficiently and effectively. These factors are key pieces of the puzzle in managing water quality holistically. Measuring wastewater strength is crucial, and one of the key tests we use is the BOD test, which stands for biochemical oxygen demand. Because wastewater contains a complex mixture of organic and inorganic pollutants, it's often challenging to characterize just by looking at it. That's where BOD comes in. It gives us an overall measure of how strong or polluted the wastewater is. The test works by measuring the amount of oxygen that the wastewater consumes when it's incubated at 20 degrees Celsius. During this process, bacteria in the sample metabolize organic materials, and in doing so, they consume oxygen. It's important to note that oxygen-scavenging chemicals, those that can also consume oxygen, are included in this measurement as well. So, the more organic material and oxygen-scavenging chemicals present in the sample, the higher the BOD value will be. This essentially tells us how much oxygen will be needed to break down all the organic matter and chemicals in the wastewater. Why does this matter? Well, the BOD test helps us determine how much dissolved oxygen will be required to stabilize the waste. This is critical because it indicates what's needed to treat the influent effectively or predicts the impact of the effluent on a receiving stream. In other words, Understanding BOD helps us gauge the potential environmental impact and plan treatment strategies to protect water quality. Understanding solids in wastewater is pretty straightforward, but it's important to grasp the key concepts. In typical domestic wastewater, the solids concentration is actually quite small compared to the amount of water present. We usually express this concentration in practical units, milligrams per liter, or mg/L. Now, when we talk about total solids, or TS, we're referring to everything that isn't water. Basically, all the solids in the sample. Within that, we have total dissolved solids, TDS, which are the solids that can't be filtered out. They're dissolved in the water. Then there are total suspended solids, or TSS. These are the solids that can be filtered out, including both settlable solids and colloids, which are non-settlable. It's helpful to understand these distinctions because they tell us different things about the wastewater. And here's an important note. 1 million milligrams equals 1 kilogram, which is about 2.2 pounds. Also, at 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 1 liter of pure water weighs 1 kilogram. So, if there's 1 milligram of solid in 1 liter of water, that's equivalent to 1 part per million, or ppm. That's why mg/L and ppm are often used interchangeably in this context. Understanding these units and distinctions helps us better analyze and treat wastewater effectively, which ties into the overall goal of improving water quality and public health. Let's take a closer look at the typical composition of domestic wastewater. As you can see, water makes up about 99.9% of what we find in wastewater, which is quite significant. The total solids, those tiny particles and substances, account for just about 0.1%, or roughly 1,000 milligrams per liter. Breaking down these solids, approximately 20% are total suspended solids, or TSS, which are particles that can settle out of the water. Within that, some of these solids are settlable, meaning they can actually drop to the bottom over time, while others are non-settlable, usually colloidal particles that stay suspended. Then we have the dissolved solids, making up about 80% of the total solids. These are dissolved directly in the water, and some are organic, like those contributing to soluble BOD, which indicates biological activity, and others are inorganic, often coming from natural sources or human use. Most dissolved organic solids come from human activities, such as household waste, whereas inorganic solids were typically present when the water was first sourced. These inorganic substances tend to pass straight through the treatment process without much change. Understanding this composition is key because it helps us target our treatment methods effectively, ensuring we remove what's necessary for safe water reuse or discharge. Now, let's take a look at the typical influent and effluent goals in wastewater treatment. On this slide, you'll see two columns, influent in milligrams per liter, and the corresponding effluent goal also in milligrams per liter. Modern wastewater treatment plants are really designed to do a couple of critical things. First, they aim to remove most of the suspended material. That includes settlable solids and colloidal particles that can cause problems if left untreated. Second, they target the removal of dissolved organic solids, which are a major source of pollution if discharged untreated. The goal here is to reduce these substances to levels that protect water quality downstream. Another key point is the reduction of pathogenic microorganisms. This step is crucial because it helps prevent the spread of waterborne diseases, safeguarding public health. Overall, these goals highlight how treatment plants work to clean wastewater effectively, making sure that what is released back into the environment is safe and environmentally responsible. It's all about achieving high-quality effluent that meets regulatory standards and protects our water resources. Now, let's take a look at the wastewater treatment process overview. It's important to recognize that not all treatment plants use the same units or methods. There are many different ways to achieve the same treatment goals. Factors like location, economic considerations, and historical practices all influence which processes are chosen. First, we have pretreatment, which involves screening out large debris, removing grit like sand and gravel, measuring flow rates, and pumping the water to the next stage. This step is crucial because it prepares the water for more detailed treatment and helps protect downstream equipment. Next is primary treatment, where we allow the wastewater to sit in clarifiers so solids can settle out by sedimentation, and flotation can occur to remove oils or grease. This reduces the load on the subsequent biological processes. Then we move into secondary treatment. Here, bacteria and other microorganisms biologically convert dissolved organic matter into solids that can settle out. This biological process is essential for removing the organic pollutants that cause environmental issues. After that, disinfection takes place. This step reduces pathogens to safe levels before the treated water is discharged into the environment. It's a vital part of protecting public health. Finally, solids handling involves thickening, digesting, dewatering, and ultimately disposing of or reusing the solids generated during treatment. Proper solids management is key to ensuring the entire process remains sustainable and environmentally responsible. Throughout this entire process, it's clear that each step plays a vital role in achieving clean, safe water, and the specific methods used can vary depending on various factors, but the overall flow remains similar. Now, let's talk about the three main oxygen conditions that sustain life and the types of bacteria that thrive in each. These conditions are crucial because they influence how wastewater treatment processes work. First up is aerobic conditions, where dissolved oxygen, or O2, is readily available. Bacteria here breathe in the oxygen, and as a result, they produce carbon dioxide and water as byproducts. This process is common in many treatment systems because it helps break down organic material efficiently. Next, we have anaerobic conditions, where there's no dissolved oxygen. Instead, oxygen is present in sulfate ions, or SO4. Certain bacteria can utilize this oxygen in sulfate, and in doing so, they produce hydrogen sulfide, or H2S, along with carbon dioxide and water. This process is quite different and often occurs in environments like sludge digesters. Finally, anoxic conditions are characterized by the absence of dissolved oxygen as well. But here, oxygen is present in nitrate ions. No three facultative bacteria, which can adapt to different conditions, utilize the oxygen in nitrate and release nitrogen gas, N2, into the atmosphere. This process is vital for removing nitrogen from wastewater. All these bacteria-driven transformations are part of larger nutrient cycles, specifically carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur cycles, that continually convert elements into different compounds. These cycles are fundamental to wastewater treatment because they help us manage and remove pollutants effectively, making sure the water is safe and clean before it's released back into the environment.